It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everybody, where every week we seek inspiration from great men and women to become the heroes and heroines of our own lives. And you are here with your hosts. I am Andrew Bernstein. You are Robert Begley. How you doing today, Robert?
Oh, Andy, I'm doing great. Since I was a boy in the Bronx, this baseball player is larger than life hero, both on and off the field, known as the Iron Horse. But for today, the pride of the Yankees we get to celebrate.
Yes, and we're talking, of course, about the immortal Lou Gehrig, 1903 to 1941. Tragically, his life was cut so short by ALS, which is known colloquially as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah.
Right?
When they name a disease after you, you know you've kind of you've made it in the public's eye, and boy, what a life though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he is, without any question, the greatest first baseman in the history of Major League Baseball. He's got no serious competitors,
Yes.
and one of the great all-around players in baseball history. And of course, just an all-around great person. Robert, a lot of times we talk about heroes, and we acknowledge moral failings, and we'll criticize them
Right.
for that. But I don't know of any in Lou Gehrig's case. He just seemed to be a really good person as well as a towering athlete.
That's right, Andy. And on that note, we'll actually mention a couple of themes for today. One is the idea of taking pride in your work, showing up, being reliable, and then excelling in your career. So we have this pride in your work. Then we have teamwork and the value of working together with other players, in his case, baseball players, but also sportsmanship. There's that opportunity to be one who, like many athletes today, they are more like in your face and talking trash, and that was not Gehrig. That's one reason. He had the same demeanor in victory or defeat. And then the third is the idea of courage, facing death, knowing you have a terminal disease that ends your career. How do you go on? How do you move on from that? So for anyone who has some kind of debilitating, it's not even necessarily a disease, some kind of obstacle in their life, how do they figure a way to go out? That's why we could look to Lou Gehrig for inspiration.
No, absolutely, absolutely. You know that pizza place in Mount Vernon, Johnny's.
Yes.
It's a big Yankee shrine. And I'll never forget, I used to go there a lot. And there's one photograph had Miller Huggins, who was the manager of the Yankees, the 27 Yankees, many people consider the greatest team in baseball history, and flanked by his two superstars, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And he was a little guy. Ruth, big guy, but Gehrig, I mean, the picture of Gehrig really shows just the bone structure. I mean, he looked like a member of a different species. His arms, his legs, I mean, they're just massive. And I know from many years of playing schoolyard basketball that the strongest guys and the toughest guys to box out under the basket, not necessarily the weightlifters who are real muscular, although that certainly helps, but those big bone guys, those raw bone guys, they are ungodly strong. And that was Lou Gehrig. The old timers say nobody hit the ball harder than Gehrig. Too bad they didn't have StatCast back in those days, Robert.
Right.
See the ball come off his bat at 120 miles per hour or whatever. He was a legendary player who was very close to 500 career home runs and very close to 2,000 career RBIs, runs batted in, when his career was truncated by the disease. If he had been able to finish that season, what year was it? 1939. He'd have been over both 500 home runs and 2,000 RBIs. So he was an extraordinary player. I think if I remember correctly, Rob, he set the American League record for runs batted in at like 175, hitting fourth behind Babe Ruth.
Behind Babe Ruth.
Ruth cleaned the bases. That was that 1927, the year that Ruth hit 60 home runs.
It was, and that got the headlines. That one achievement of Ruth drowned out, the headlines that Gehrig should
But
have.
but Gehrig
Uh,
was the league MVP that year, wasn't he? Didn't
when
Gehrig
he
win the
was
most
the
valuable player award?
yes, yes,
Even though Ruth hit 60 home runs.
even though Ruth hit 60 home runs, his number was 4 because he batted fourth in the lineup, and he was the reason they actually had numbers. Gehrig was 3; he batted number 3 in the lineup. So even before, athletes didn't wear numbers, in the early days, and that was a way to identify the players. And of course, we covered Babe Ruth, and he would hit these towering home runs that went up and just seemed to go up forever. But Gehrig's was more of these, they were line drives. They were just he just crushed
he
the
would have
baseball.
been a Statcast darling. I mean, that's the way Giancarlo Stanton. You bring up a contemporary player today. Hit one, by the way, hit one yesterday. Stanton hit one yesterday, 485 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
And, but yeah, the line drives, you blink your eye, and it's like a shot out of a rifle. It's out of the park. That's how Gehrig, just like you said, just crushed the ball. And he was a very good defensive first baseman also
He became one. He wasn't initially, they had him play first base because that was a position, because he started as a pitcher. And they didn't really like him as a pitcher, but the Yankee scout who saw him in New York, by the way, let's just backtrack a little bit. He went to Columbia University, lived in Germantown, his German ancestor, his parents.
Yorkville, right?
Yorkville, the Upper East Side.
Yeah,
that's right. And I went to Columbia, and I used to give walking tours of Columbia University. I used to live right nearby, and there's a window in like way off away from the baseball field. And I would point and say, Gehrig cracked that window. He hit the ball that far. So a Yankee scout saw him, brings him to the major league team. After 1 or 2 years, Babe Ruth is already the big time celebrity star, larger than life figure, transcended baseball itself. And Gehrig was more quiet. So he wasn't flashy. So he didn't seek out publicity. But when it came time to being on the field, and this is the major achievement, we talk about showing up for work, Andy, 2,130 consecutive games this man played in, which was a record for more than 50 years. And he didn't just play in them, he towered above the sport.
Right. 2,130 consecutive games played over, I don't remember how many years
17.
that was. 17 seasons, earns him the nickname the Iron Horse, record that stood for, like you said, over 50 years until Cal Ripken broke it in 1995. Ripken, although he was a great player, was not, in Lou Gehrig's class. And by the way, speaking of his German ancestry, Robert, his given name was Heinrich Ludwig. Heinrich Ludwig Gehrig. So it was Americanized to Henry Louis. Henry Louis Gehrig.
And his father was actually also named Henry, so that was why Lou himself took on his middle name to kind of separate himself from the father. And once he joined the Yankees, I think they had only had
his parents didn't even want him to play baseball.
No, they didn't want him to play baseball. And by the way, let's just take a moment to say we have this course Andy will be leading on films coming up April 24th. And but Pride of the Yankees, Andy, every July 4th, they'd show this movie on TV with Gary Cooper, who was way better as Lou Gehrig than he was as Howard Rourke.
Yes.
Talk about figures to cover on film. But the Yankees were not a celebrated franchise. First Babe Ruth, but without Lou Gehrig, they would not have been the dynasty, that they became. So just Andy, this idea though of showing up for work and doing your job well. As a kid, I heard this story. I saw the monument at Yankee Stadium. I lived a few blocks away, so I would go all the time. And for me personally, my last 2 years of high school, then I went to 2 years college/trade school, 12 years at Merrill Lynch and other jobs. I had perfect attendance because I thought of a Lou Gehrig. I was like, I'm going to show up. I'm going to be reliable, because this man did this. He did it as long as he could until his body literally started breaking down.
Mhm.
And this is, we look at why heroes inspire us, and what do we do? How do they affect us in real life? And as I said, since my earliest days, I thought of this man, and he's had that kind of impact on me.
Now, I understand. I'm thinking of one time in my life, I had the flu. And oh man, I was really enervated. I mean, I just had no energy. I was teaching weekend college at Marymount College at that time. I was going to go in, and my ex-wife, who is a very good person, said to me, "Andy, you really should stay in bed." I said, I thought of Lou Gehrig. I said, I got a job
Yeah.
to do. I went in. I told all the students, keep your distance. Don't get too close to me. I wasn't much of a lecturer that day, but I did the best I could, and then I went home with the bed. But Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig is an inspiration. Really, it's an under-celebrated virtue, dedication to your job.
Yeah.
To be that's being a professional and doing the best you can every day, and you don't miss work unless your wife had a baby, you had to rush into the hospital, some really important thing supersedes that. Other than that, you go to work every day, and then you do your job to the very best of your ability. Ayn Rand celebrates. Again, we always mention Ayn Rand. If you haven't read her great novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, I certainly recommend you to do so. But she celebrates productivity as a virtue, and part of that is showing up
Yes.
every day and doing your job. And Lou Gehrig is like the exemplar of that. So salute him just for that. Never mind the level at which he performed his job.
Yeah, and then the next point is teamwork.
Let me jump in for a second, Robert, because I just thought of something. So Lou Gehrig's a star for the Yankees, late 20s and early 30s. Meantime, speaking of the Bronx, there's this kid in the Bronx playing first base for one of the local high schools by the name of Hank Greenberg. And and by the way, Greenberg maybe deserves a hero show episode himself one day, because it's like the first Jew to be a real star in Major League Baseball. He caught a lot of hell, but he dealt with it professionally and helped pave the way for Jackie Robinson, who caught even more brutality when he broke the color barrier. But anyhow, so Greenberg, great player, big, strong left-hand hitter, perfect for Yankee Stadium. But the Yankees wouldn't sign. He's right there in their backyard. I don't remember what high school he was. It DeWitt Clinton? It was one of the high schools in the Bronx. I don't remember which one. But anyway, the Yankees wouldn't sign because they had the Iron Horse. And so, Greenberg was signed by the Detroit Tigers, and went on to have a Hall of Fame career. But, we should tell, speaking of Lou Gehrig, playing every day, and therefore, other great players, like there was no opportunities for somebody like Greenberg to play for his hometown team. We should talk about Wally Pipp for just a minute, because there's even a term now in sports that so-and-so got Wally Pipp.
Yes.
You want to tell that story?
Sure. Well, Wally Pipp was the first baseman for the Yankees, and he was a competent player.
Yeah, he was a good player
in his own right, but he one day didn't feel well, and he
had migraine. He had migraines or something.
He had migraine. Like, yes, he had a migraine, and he told the manager, I can't go out there today. And sure enough, they put in Lou Gehrig, and 2,130 games later, Pipp had long retired, but Gehrig just took, he took that position and continued on. And there's a sports expression, Andy, you should not lose your job to injury. They usually, the starter who gets injured, he's replaced by someone. And no matter how good the replacement does, it's like an underground standard that, okay, the starter will come back. Usually they're paid 10 times the wages, and that's why. But in this case, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Wally Pipp was not, his career was over as a Yankee.
Right. And Wally Pipp I think he ended up with the Cincinnati Reds and had some good seasons for them. He was a very good player, but he wasn't a mega star, gigantic, heroic kind of player like Gehrig was. So today, to this day in different sports, if somebody was a regular, and gets replaced by somebody else who's a star, and the first guy then loses his job, the expression is, well, he got Wally pipped by, so
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. But coming back now to the idea of teamwork, we know that in sports, even as kids, that's kind of one of our first opportunities to deal with this idea of teamwork. Some people are like sore losers, and they don't show sportsmanship, and they get these characteristics when they're young. They're not, they can't handle losing, they can't handle adversity. And then others embrace the idea of teamwork, no matter what their ability is, and they want to treat the others with respect and try to inspire them and show that consistency yet again, whether you won or lost. And that was something I think is not emphasized enough, but Lou Gehrig, once again, he was fabulous at that, in that sense.
Yeah, Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig was just, he was more than a superstar baseball player. He's a really good person.
Yeah.
In fact, he was, like you were saying, Robert, as a personality, he was like the polar opposite from the Bay, who was a big time partier, all night carouser, and, running around with, I don't know how many different women, and drinking, and come to, baseball games were day games back then. And you come to the 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock start the next day, never mind still hungover. He hadn't been to, I wouldn't say hadn't been to bed, because he was a notorious womanizer, but hadn't been to sleep. He hadn't been to sleep. He hadn't been up all night, and he'd come in and perform, which is extraordinary. And don't try this at home. This is not good for your life expectancy.
Yeah.
But the Babe was exceptional in that way. But Lou Gehrig was not a carouser, a partier. He married. Was true to his wife from all accounts that we had. He was a family man, and just an all around good person. And at least in the movies, Babe Ruth initially dismissed Lou Gehrig. He's a mama's boy. Because he had a good, Gehrig had a good relationship with his mother, and he wasn't out half the night or all night, partying and everything. But no, I admire the Babe, and there's some, there's all these stories about people who could do that, carouse all night and come perform the next day at an exceptional level. They tell the same kind of stories about one of your other heroes. That's Rudolph Nureyev, in a very different field. That he was a Hall of Fame carouser with insatiable sexual appetite. And then he come the next day without having slept and just put on a brilliant performance. I don't know how anybody could do it. I can't, but I don't even want to. But Lou Gehrig was not that guy. He was home sleeping, at night, not out carousing all night.
That's right, Andy. And
he was a Boy Scout. He was a Boy Scout, compared to the Babe, who was another one Hall of Fame, partier.
Yeah, and so sticking with this idea of teamwork, there's two other quick points.
Speaking of teamwork, Robert, didn't he and Babe Ruth eventually become friends, or at least could tolerate each other?
Yes, it was rough. They were polar opposite personalities. So. And Babe was immature in so many ways.
Yeah.
And Lou had.
Well, he never had any parents.
Yes, that's right.
Lou Gehrig did. Lou Gehrig had the benefit of coming out of a really good family.
But one thing the both of them did, Andy, was go around to hospitals. Okay, they both loved going around to hospitals and seeing children who were unable to walk, who had different kinds of afflictions, and gave them unforgettable experiences. promising to hit a home run and then backing that up, promising. In Pride of the Yankees, the movie, the little boy says, "Oh, Babe promised me 1 home run. Lou, you have to hit 2." Like, what? And then what does he do? He goes out and blasts 2. First play, it hit 4 home runs in 1 game.
That's right.
So many things that this man did. So that's a different aspect of this is what we can call teamwork. Like,
they set the record
field.
for hitting grand slams too. Home runs with the
That's
bases
right,
loaded, which is
decades.
Alex Rodriguez eventually broke it. But that's hard to hit all those grand slams when you have Babe Ruth hitting ahead of you in the lineup.
Yes,
hitting 60 home runs. So,
and the other thing that the two of them did, Andy, was barnstorm in the off season, because players. Ruth made a lot of money. We mentioned earlier he had a better year than the president and made more money than the president for several years. But Gehrig didn't make that much. And baseball players would play during the offseason all over the country in what they call barnstorming. And they would often play with black players who were prohibited from playing in Major League Baseball. And Gehrig spoke out against that. Yeah. He said there's no place in that. If they are good enough to play with us, they should be allowed. And here's another example where we have teamwork, we have leadership, we have someone using his forum, in being a superstar athlete and calling out a hypocritical stance.
Yeah, I mean, he recognized this kind of racism was reprehensible. And, and specifically in this context, it completely abrogates the merit system, because there were all kinds of great black ball players, in the old Negro leagues, as it was known, and all kinds of great players, and they should be playing in the big leagues, and the racism is just irrational, and it goes against the best qualities of America, freedom, individual rights, self-made man, merit system. The best should be free to rise to the top. And Gehrig spoke out. And again, on teamwork, I'm guessing, much as I love the Babe, Robert, I'm guessing the Babe wasn't the easiest guy to get along with. Like you said, he was very immature, although he had a big heart. He loved kids and everything, but he was difficult to get along with. But I'm guessing Gehrig was not difficult to get along with.
And named the first Yankees team captain. If we just bridge leadership and teamwork and leadership, named as the first captain. And if we look at the Yankee legacy, which starts with Ruth, then has Gehrig, and then the third superstar is Joe DiMaggio. And Gehrig was the one who bridged the two. So the 1936 Yankees, which my brother Damien says was superior even to the 1927 Yankees.
And they may have been.
And I mean, that's how what are
that
they
was
called?
DiMaggio's rookie year, right? And that was Lou Gehrig's last great
year. Yeah. And this is during the Depression. This is the 1930s. Baseball, the whole country is in a bad way, but they knew that the fans knew they can go to the baseball stadium, Yankee Stadium, which they call the house that Ruth built, but Gehrig was built for that stadium as well as a left-handed batter. He was perfect for that. And this is another thing that gave fans hope. They can go out and see, to this day, Andy, when things are bad, we could at least watch an event and see the human body strive for this goal of perfection, that and in a team sport, have our team win. And this makes a difference in our lives.
Absolutely. This is the great inspirational value of sports, that you're watching Major League Baseball or you're watching the NBA or whatever it is. These are the best in the world, right? These are the best players in the world in this sport. That's why Michael Jordan became, he transcended sports the way Babe Ruth did. I mean, he was just this tremendous hero to so many people, including me. And there's, by the way, there's a new movie coming out about Michael Jordan, coming out this week, I think. Air, about Nike's attempt to build a shoe around MJ. Yeah, I look forward to that. But it's inspiration. Like you said, you could be down, and depressed or something. But you see these great athletes who, if you know anything about sports, the overwhelming majority of them work not just really hard during the game to try and win, but they work really hard to get to be as good as they are. They were you
Yes.
might be born with a great body, but you don't become Lou Gehrig without a lot of practice. And like you said, he was not a great defender at first, but he built himself up into being one, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
the old joke in the New York City joke. Kid asks a guy on the street, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the guy
Mhm.
says to him, practice on practice.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the that's the way a
Mhm.
lot of practice, the way you get to be Lou Gehrig. That's the way you get to be Michael Jordan. That's the way you get to be able to play, a performance at Carnegie Hall, and so on and so forth. That's inspiring.
Yes.
That hard work, and so my thinking then is, well, I may not, have the talent in my field that Lou Gehrig has in his field, but if I'm as dedicated to my craft as he is, which is
Mhm.
volitional, it's open to choice. If I work as hard as he does, how high can I rise in my own field? So yeah,
Right.
great athletes are inspirational in that regard. I think we can properly regard them as heroes.
Yes, and then what happens when they get older and their skills diminish? And in Garrett's case, you mentioned 1936, his last great year. 1937, he's not as good. 1938, he even comes to spring training, and where he used to be able to crush the ball in the past, now it's like weak pop-ups, and he doesn't know what's going on. So uh, everybody's puzzled, and he goes to the Mayo Clinic, which was not known. It's very popular now, but in the 1936, 37, 38, he goes there, and they tell him, we don't even know what you have, but your body is breaking down. But he continues, Andy. Every day he goes out there, continues playing for a couple of more years, and has that courage. That's this aspect. Like, what kind of moral courage does it take to still go out there, hoping at some point you'll reverse? You can work your way, kind of gut it out, and work your way through this kind of adversity. And in Garrett's case, unfortunately, they realize that no, not only are you not going to be able to continue playing baseball, your life now is in jeopardy.
Yeah, and it's just heartbreaking. But Lou Gehrig's farewell speech at Yankee Stadium, when
Yes.
even though he's dying, he died shortly before his 38th birthday, right? So he was very, very,
Oh
very
boy.
young,
Yeah.
and still, looking back on his life and his career, said sincerely, it sounded like that. I
Yep.
considered himself the luckiest man on the face of the earth,
Yeah.
and it's just poignant, powerful speech that Gehrig gave to a packed house at Yankee Stadium.
On July 4th. And the most famous speech in baseball. Baseball's not known as a speaking forum, but because he's tried starting that year, 1939, and could not continue, on July 4th, which is somewhere like the midway point of the baseball season, they decided, let's celebrate this man. We don't know how much longer he has to live. And in that speech, and he says, you could say I've been dealt a bad break, but I have a lot to live for. Okay. He wanted to continue living, and did the best he could. Only lasted, a couple of years later, 1940, 41,
Yeah,
42.
41. Yes.
And just, yeah. Then all of a sudden, like, all of the accolades, and right, 42 is the film about him. It took a year later until they made a movie with actually Babe Ruth. So even though he was younger than Babe Ruth, he sadly lived a shorter life. And even if we come up to the present, Andy, a couple of years ago, for this disease, ALS. Do you remember they had that bucket challenge? You know, everyone was putting ice water over their heads and shoot videos of it. I don't know how many people remember that. So maybe less than 10 years ago, but that was what it was, to raise money for ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, which is, you know, the thing that prevented this man from doing, you know, from excelling in his job as a Major League Baseball player. And but again, for me, Andy, growing up in the Bronx and seeing his monument, Yankee Stadium has the monument of him with, you know, with his statistics and his dates. And one last thing I'll say, Andy, when our first day when I founded New York Hero Society, inspired by your book on Heart of a Pagan, our first event was at Kensico Cemetery, where novelist, philosopher Ayn Rand is buried. And we went to her grave, and then we actually went to Lou Gehrig. So he's a 5-minute walk from where she is. And just celebrating this man's life and achievements. To me, still to this day, I think of him when I want to show up and do something when I'm not 100% in it. It's like a matter of, okay, that's what a hero does.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I got to say, you know, my mother, having lived her whole life in Brooklyn, New York, was a big Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And she hated the Yankees. And, you know, she hated the Yankees like they were fascists. And yet, every time prior to the Yankees was on TV, she watched it. She loved that movie. You know, and it's a very good movie, so I could strongly recommend it. And
I was the same way, Andy. I mean, I grew up, as you know, I was a Mets fan. I grew up in the Bronx, but all my siblings, all my friends, Yankees. I was like, no, I like that other team. Well, you mentioned Lou Gehrig, and I stop. I take my hat off. Okay. And I say, for that man, he's even above the Yankees. He's like, this is baseball.
He transcends sports. Excellence at what he does, courage in the face of death. Just a beautiful soul. You know, Lou Gehrig had a major league soul. And you know, he was a really, really good person. He may have been as good a person as he was a ball player, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I think we should salute this man. You know, thank you, Mr. Gehrig. You were dealt a bad blow, but you know, my God, what you did in that short lifespan that you had is extraordinary, and it's appropriate. We're filming this. What is it today? April 3rd. So the baseball season has just started.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's appropriate to on the Hero Show, honor one of the greatest baseball players who ever lived, a man who, to this day, after 120 years of baseball, you pick your all-time baseball team, everybody has Lou Gehrig at first base. You know,
right.
I don't even know. I don't even know who would be a rival to Gehrig at that. A lot of great first basemen in baseball history, but only one Lou Gehrig.
Yes, absolutely.
So we celebrate the Iron Horse, and you guys have been watching the Hero Show. So next week we'll be back once again, you know, with more heroes to inspire us. Yeah, you know, and Lou Gehrig, talking about being inspiring, you know, courage in the face of death, like you said, is very inspiring, sad, but inspiring. And next week we'll be back again with another hero, you know, to help inspire us to be the best versions of ourselves. Next week, once again on the Hero Show. So we'll see you then, everybody.
Signing off. Bye-bye.